Good morning. I've been thinking about, I've been using my tablet, my Surface tablet, more, and have been getting into sketching and learning Krita, which is great. Krita's really cool. And I find myself wishing I had some buttons on it, just for control while operating the pen. Because one hand's on the pen and you're doing your thing, and then you can switch to your finger input to move things around or drag things. But having I'm thinking of having some kind of, you're using the pen with one hand and you're holding onto the tablet with the other hand. And if I had something on the hand that had, possibly on the back of the tablet where you can flip on and off or push buttons for holding Control or Alt or holding down spacebar or something like that, being able to switch between the tools really quickly would be nice. Something like that would be helpful in yeah, that's right. I got to talk to. Forgot about that. Alright. Something like that would be pretty cool for like CAD, because you're using a mouse to operate and you want modifiers to be able to activate or flip between tools, so you're not constantly flipping over and click here, move, drag, flip over, click here, move, drag. Shortcuts for all that is obviously a lot easier, and you should be doing that on your keyboard anyways, but for like there are times when I want to review a circuit board, and if I'm opening KiCad up on my tablet, I've got I'm somewhat hamstrung by what I'm capable of doing, and then I have to open up the on-screen keyboard and then awkwardly tap the button I want to press. Having commonly used buttons on the back or switches or something like that, I'm not quite sure. Something where I can hold on to it. And this is kind of the weird thing, because you have to hold on to it, which means you're putting pressure here, but then you also need to be able to have some digital movement to be able to flip switches or activate different things. So it's like part of your hand is holding on to it, but also part of your hand also needs to be able to pick up and move and select things. Or maybe not, I don't know. Because so think about, this is just input, right? But it's also, it doesn't need to be switches. It can be like a touch thing. Think about a touchpad on the back, that kind of thing. So you're holding onto it and you're using your finger to kind of make small movements for your mouse. And you're moving the mouse around like a touchpad. Or you have a resistive panel on the back, which would be very interesting. And you probably need something tactile, some kind of ridges on the back or something, so that you can feel where your where your fingers are, so that they fit into like even some grooves, and you can hold on to it. And if you hold with a lot of pressure, or you apply more pressure with this finger, it'll activate the resistive touch area, and then that can activate whatever button you want. Anyway, since I've had the Digi Rule, I've been carrying it like this, and it fits into this little flat sleeve on the case. And I have had an interest for a while in flat circuits. So speaking of flat circuits, that's interesting. The Pocket Chip. So the Pocket Chip has a keyboard on it, and the original keyboard is bad, but it does work. And it uses, oh, that's very interesting. Those they're like metal dome switches. I'm not sure what you call them. But it's basically a little, it's like one of those little poppers, like a steel popper like this. It's popped up, and when you push it in the middle, it kind of like clicks down and flattens out. And when it flattens out, it makes contacts, and then, you know, the button is activated. Those are particularly difficult to activate. I shouldn't say particularly difficult. They're somewhat annoying to activate, but you can rest your finger on top of them, and like, you can feel where they are, which is the benefit. So you're doing it blind. You've got these buttons on the back of your keyboard of your tablet that you're putting your fingers on, and you need to be able to find the, you know, homing row bumps so that your fingers are aligned on the correct buttons, and from there you can move to, you know, a different button, or you can push the button that you're on. And then if you hold all of them and put pressure on all of them, you're not going to activate all of them unless you very intently, forcefully push or switch to your fingernail. Like, that was one of the problems with the pocket chip keyboard, is you kind of had to very, very intently put a single point of force onto it. Because if you just had the pad of your thumb and you just kind of pushed, it just kind of, it didn't have enough force in the middle to pop. Well, that's interesting. I thought about something like that. See, switches like that, like here we are talking about tactile switches and what switches to use. And when I'm thinking about this, I'm like, okay, so low profile, whatever those switches are, the low profile switches, like, those are still really thick. Plus, we're going to add a PCB on the bottom, on the back of it. And if you put your fingers on it and press, it hold, you know, so you can hold the tablet while you're working, you're basically pressing those buttons. You're holding them down. So that does not apply. That does not fit here. And those are those tactile metallic dome buttons. Those things are bad. I regarded them as terrible. They are bad. They are technically tactile, but they're difficult to activate. And they require very specific pressure to activate. And I viewed them to be pretty much useless. Yet here we are, looking at a very specific use case where you want to be able to actually apply pressure and make it very intent when you activate those buttons. So that's, not to mention they're completely flat because they're going over, they don't even have to go over PCB. Well, I was talking about flat circuits, so this, like, the digi rule is, you know, I've got it programmed to do generic countdown timer functions, and what else? I've got that kill the bit game on it in one memory slot, and the timer works fine. I mean, it works great, actually. I think I lose a second in there somehow. I'm not quite sure how, but maybe in the initial run. Sorry. So that works well. It's just cool to have it and have it be flat like that. I'd like to have it so that I can make a supplemental digital output and you know, put a 7-segment display on it, or even more segments. I don't know if I'll be able to fit everything into 252 bytes though, but the idea of having a segment display hooked up to those 16 LEDs where I can make letters and then pre-program 2 bytes of data to set letter outputs, and then it can make letters, and I'll obviously have to program the ruler to recognize what the letters are, or what the light configuration is for those letters. But it's there, you know. It would be pretty cool if I could figure out how to like, this is all minimal stuff. It's minimized circuits. It's minimized even just code. It's not doing much at all. The idea that these circuits are flat is what's particularly interesting to me, because I did talk about this. Not wearables, HAVEables. This. So Vexus, I had this idea a bit ago, and I recently got parts in for it. Vexus has a nice little OLED display, right? And that OLED display works quite well. But I would like very much to have a heads-up display, and I did not think that was possible. The heads-up displays are ridiculously expensive. and mostly bad. So, or, you know, suck up battery power. And I found a few that were actually good, that actually worked. And what I found was not that I needed that layout, but he had all the lens calculations required for being able to see something that's close up. So you need a, you know, basically your eye can't focus on something that's closer than, you know, whatever this distance is. It's less than a foot, but if it gets too close, you basically can't focus on it, unless you get a, I think it's called a Fresnel lens. It's basically a magnifying lens, like a soft magnifying lens. Then you can focus, you know, the lens has to be kind of close to your eye, but you can focus a lot closer. So what then? Like, you can bring things a little bit closer like this. Now, how does Vexus, how does an OLED display find its way close to your eye? Well, you mount it to a couple mirrors. So, and I often wear hats, obviously. So if I'm wearing a hat and I take Vexus and slap it onto the brim of the hat right here, such that the OLED is facing down, I can put a mirror so that the light is reflected forward, and then a transparent piece of glass at the front to reflect that light, and get a lens in front of my eye if I look up. So I can have a hole in the hat, essentially, where you would have this, stick it on the side, or, you know, mount the OLED by itself, just for whatever other display. Mount it here. It would reflect forward into the hat, and I would probably have to, you know, cut a big slot here and then 3D print some kind of armature to house all this stuff, because it doesn't have to be dark. Any light's going to wash out any of it. But it works. I tested it out a little bit ago. It dramatically reduces the amount of distance that has to be between your eye and the OLED display. So having it attached to a hat, or building a heads-up display into the hat, is pretty neat. That's doable. That works. There are bits that are overkill for what I'm trying to do, but it's still a good proof of concept and a good way to figure out the math. Also a good way to figure out if it's just too heavy anyways, because if it's just too heavy, you're not going to wear it. It's annoying. Hats are annoying enough to wear. I don't like having anything heavy on my head or anything heavy on my shoulders. Like carrying a rifle, it just wears you out. It gives me a neck ache. What else? So just like I said, not wearables, HAVEables. So something like this, if I had, you know, DigiRule built into, see how flat this is, it just under a slip cover, like a plastic slip cover, where you can see it and operate the buttons and see the LEDs, and then you know, slide it to one side if you want to plug into the USB port on the bottom. That would be ideal. That would be great, because then it's here, it's protected, and it's still completely operable. So that's just flat circuits. That's the idea. And then when those circuits get flatter, the PCBs can get thinner, because if it's flat, the idea is you're having it mated with another surface. So the rigidity is coming from this case. It's not coming from this itself. So, you know, I can take this and hit it against something, but if I attach it to this, well, now, you know, the rigidity is imparted by the thing you're attaching it to, so you can go a lot thinner on the PCB, maybe even flexible. So that's other options. I gotta figure out those buttons. That's I never thought of that. Thank you. I still don't know why this works so well, but it does work really well, and I do get to explain stuff and rethink about things and come up with new ideas. So thanks for being here. Is it thanks audience, I guess? Thanks audience. Thaudience.